This is world champion Lisa Ryan. Also two-time Australian champ, Lisa is now preparing for the World Cup to be held at Gore Bay in New Zealand in November. The 23-year-old has set herself a demanding schedule, entering both the men's and women's open events.
It's really handy going into the men's section before the women's because you're surfing on that break. You get to know what the break is like, so you're ready for the women's event.
Conditions in New Zealand will be very different to the warmer waters of Australia's coast.
The wave is going to be a beach break. It's going to be very cold. Where the competition is held, it's about an hour from Christchurch, and there's 3 river mouths coming down from the mountains in a space of 20 kilometres, so the competition water is going to be cold as well as a chill factor.
If Lisa wins in New Zealand, she'll be the first female wave skier ever to have held the World Cup and World title simultaneously. A pretty impressive resume for someone relatively unknown in Australia. The problem is Lisa's the world's best in a low-profile sport. On the financial front, she doesn't enjoy the lucrative contracts or prize money many of her counterparts in other sports do. Lisa relies on equipment sponsorship and self-funding to get to competitions.
It is very difficult. It's hard thinking when I came back from South Africa that things were becoming a little bit easier with being the world champion, but it doesn't happen that way. Things are still hard to get. I'm still paying to go to competitions. It's all for the love of it.
That love is conveyed not only in the water, but in Lisa's desire to foster the sport. As well as concentrating on her own program at the World Cup, Lisa will take with her 2 wave skiers from the Hunter Academy of Sport, whom she's been training for the past 12 months. Her attention appears to be paying off. 20-year-old Nick Boone is ranked 1 in New South Wales in the Open Men's Division, and Peter Conlon, aged 18, has made every junior final he's competed in this season. The group departs for New Zealand November 12th, with competition starting 2 days later. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
The Knights reserves were back at home today, both players and officials expressing the disappointment of not being able to cap an outstanding season with the Premiership. Leading 4-0 early in the match, the Knights withstood a barrage late in the first half, their courageous defence costing them in the second half.
I knew that took a lot out of us, though, that defence. I haven't seen anything like that in any other game. So, credit to the boys, they hung in there, and it probably just took a bit of the edge off our attack.
Cronulla went on to score 2 second-half tries for a 14-4 victory, capturing their first reserve-grade title. Reserves coach and football manager Robert Finch will fly to England this Sunday for talks with new first-grade coach Malcolm Reilly. Meantime, the Newcastle Falcons will also start planning for season 95 next week. Saturday's loss to North Melbourne keeping them out of the playoffs. Terry Dozier will undergo knee surgery shortly and return to the United States. With just 2 players contracted for next season, Dozier is one of many players club officials will be negotiating with in the coming weeks.
We've got quite a few players out of contract, and we'll be talking to all those players beginning next week and sitting down and really trying to put together the team for next year. There's always next year in this business, so that's what we'll be looking at.
Fishermen, like farmers, are waiting for a good fall of rain. Prawns congregate in the upper reaches of the river as they mature, but it takes a good flood to get them on the move and into the nets. 34 boats work the Hunter between Raymond Terrace and Stockton, and this afternoon their crews waited anxiously on the outcome of the annual test trawl.
Up in the top end of the river at the moment, there's no water. The rain, we want brackish water to bring the actual prawns down. They're not going to come down until they're ready. But at this stage, there's no way in the world that we would recommend that the river be open for another 10 days. We'd then conduct another test trawl.
It's disappointing news for some who've already been through a few lean years. But in the interests of conserving stock, they'll have to wait a bit longer.
I think she's cactus for another couple of months at least. It's not viable, it's far from viable.
When the rain comes and the prawns run, the co-op will probably be selling them for more than $18 a kilo. In the meantime, some of the boats sit it out on a sea of grass. Others mightn't see the season through.
We might need a hand out next year.
Arms required 3 stitches in his left hand after splitting the webbing on Saturday, and if unfit is likely to be replaced by Belmont's Greg Charlton.
I think if it was maybe a one-day game I would be okay, but being a 3-day game and catches are so important, I'm not very hopeful at the moment.
No such injury concerns for the Tasmanians, who are training this afternoon. Were happy to see a dry, firm pitch, as much of their pre-season has been dogged by bad weather. The Shield finalists are certain to make first use of the wicket if they win the toss, given their talented batting lineup.
Super track, yeah, I think it's quite a nice hard wicket and there's a good covering of grass. It'll probably take some spin towards day 3, but I think it's an excellent wicket.
For Tasmanian captain Rod Tucker, Newcastle rekindles fond memories as he began his career in the city growing up in Charlestown in the early 70s. He says spectators will see some of the country's finest batting talent over the next 4 days, with the likes of Australian A-side hopefuls Ricky Ponting, Michael DiVinito and Jamie Cox already in good form this season.
Pont's got a couple of hundreds, and a young fella called Andy Belsack, who's forced his way into the squad's got a couple of 80s and 90s, and guys are batting very well.
A glass of milk or an ice cream is an everyday activity for some people, but for the 10% of Australians with lactose intolerance, it's just a dream. Their bodies can't digest the lactose or sugar content in dairy products without becoming ill, with symptoms ranging from slight to sickening.
Some of those symptoms are abdominal distension, so you get a pushing out of the stomach, pain in the abdomen. The most severe symptom really is the appearance of a watery osmotic diarrhoea.
Lynn Kobiak is a CSIRO scientist who presented a review of lactose intolerance to a national nutrition conference in Newcastle. Australia's Asian and Aboriginal populations are the worst affected, with up to 9 out of 10 people with the condition. And although the country's overall rate is low compared with the rest of the world, it is on the increase.
What's happening in Australia is that we're getting a different ethnic mix, so we're getting a different cultural group, and we're getting an influx of people who may have an inbuilt intolerance, and so therefore the percentage in Australia is increasing.
Food producers are now realising the potential of this market, with a range of goods catering for people who can't eat dairy products. This looks like ice cream and tastes like ice cream, but it has no lactose. And for people like me who can't eat dairy products, it's a whole new way of life. This ice cream substitute has been developed by Newcastle inventor Rowan O'Reilly, who was sick of lactose-free products being poor imitations of the real thing.
There's only a few to choose from, and they're not really a substitute for ice cream. That they're okay in their own right, but they're just not a substitute for ice cream. It's not something you'd sit down a Sunday night and get into a bowl of.
After 2 years of research in the kitchen, Rowan's ready to take his product to the world.
I think it's got potentially a very big market. Estimates are that 70% of the world's population are lactose intolerant, so it's quite big.
Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
A quiet day's fishing near Wyong quickly turned to despair for Central Coast fishermen Terry Catlin and friend Tony Thomas. Around 11 a.m, the pair moved up the coast to Moon Island off Swansea Channel south of Newcastle.
You understand you've got a vessel in distress around Moon Island?
The motor wouldn't start, so I threw out the anchor and that held, and then tried to get the motor going again, and the anchor gave way, and next minute we're up on the rocks.
With the swell picking up, 2 passing boats came to help, but as Mark Wanless, a professional fisherman, moved in to rescue the grounded boat, he too fell victim. After several attempts, his hull-damaged catamaran was pulled to safety by the water police. Meanwhile, Terry Catlin pondered his ordeal.
The only time I got a bit scared was when the boat turned over and Tony was still inside it, but he got out all right.
The pair was airlifted to safety by the NBN helicopter and then interviewed by Coast Guard officials. Surprised by how close the boat came to the rocks, the Coast Guard says the incident is not a one-off case. About half a dozen similar accidents occur each year, with half of the boats damaged beyond repair. Coast Guard Commander Doug Young believes today's scenario could have easily been worse.
Looking back a month or so ago, where you had very big swells and very heavy waves breaking on the island, yes, it could have had a somewhat different outcome, and they wouldn't have been so lucky at all.
Terry Catlin says from now on he'll keep well clear of rocks when fishing. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
Tasmania declared its second innings at 7 for 161, leaving Newcastle an achievable 253 runs for victory. Newcastle's top order struggled against the new ball, but still managed to post its first 100 in 93 minutes for the loss of 3 wickets. Paul Ross gave the batting some authority, but he fell shortly after, courtesy the hands of Dean Hills. That was 1 of 3 wickets for Wosley, as he combined with Brian Robinson to tear apart the Newcastle lineup. Newcastle lost 5 for 31 in the hour before tea, Robinson grabbing 4 wickets, leaving the home side stranded at 8 for 133 with a session to go. A desperate 53 not out by late replacement Greg Charlton was too little too late for the home team, all out for 216. Newcastle get the chance to atone tomorrow with a one-dayer against Tasmania. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
$350 juniors from around Australia have spent the week in Newcastle playing in the city's Junior Open. Today, the best 2 in each age group battled it out in the finals. 18 boys number 1 seed Ben Coates in the blue hat had his work cut out for him. Newcastle's Kyron Pinter, seeded second, was out to cause an upset. Pinter took the first set 7-5, only to see his Grafton opponent gain the advantage and after 2.5 hours take the next 2 sets 6-3, 6-4. In the 17 girls final, Kate Wyatt in the blue kept the South Australian flag flying. The top seed proved too strong for Cessnock's Melissa Roddy, defeating her 6-2, 6-1. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
The messy chop that marred yesterday's competition was replaced today with clean offshore conditions. The North Coast Ian Bell made a good start to the 8-foot final before the favourite Sharp came into his own. This tube ride impressing the judges early. While Sharp continued to perform consistently, Newcastle's Shane Ross provided plenty of competition. This final ride almost enough to steal the title. But it wasn't enough. Sharp holding on to beat Ross with Bell third. Meantime, the Newcastle Pittwater Yacht Race got off to a slow start in Newcastle Harbour this morning, with Zigzag 2 and Showdown expected to fight out line honours this evening. Yesterday, Wings 4, skippered by Bill Davis, took line honours in the Pittwater to Newcastle, while Cannon Copiers was first on handicap. And in Speedway, John Pine has taken out the 10-lap Super Sedan feature at Newcastle's first meeting for the season last night. Pine won the event from Robert Carrick and Stu Robinson, while Ross Gilson took out the modified rod final. Navy SEAL was back in Newcastle today, fit and well after yesterday's remarkable effort, winning the Epsom Handicap as first emergency. Poetic King scratching, allowing the 5-year-old and Paul Perry to enter racing history. Perry was back in Sydney today fulfilling Rose Hill commitments, but he did concede that he thought Navy SEAL could win, despite drawing barrier 20 after dropping 7 kilos from a solid performance in the George Main Stakes.
When there was a scratching, we were able to get Darren Beedman on, that give him enhanced his chances a good deal, and with the way he raced the week before, I thought he had a great chance in the race.
Perry says he had trouble convincing Beedman to take the ride. The 28-year-old hoop taking out his third Epsom in similar circumstances to his first, when he won on first emergency Regal Native in 1988. Navy SEAL will head for Melbourne for the Caulfield Cup, and given yesterday's run, more Group 1 success isn't out of the question.
I think the form he's in at the moment, he's a very fit horse. I think the mile and a half, the Caulfield Cup, should suit him.
Family and friends rallied round the Draytons' home this morning. Hopes still high Reg and Pam Drayton may be found. 62-year-old Reg Drayton is regarded as a father figure in the Hunter Valley vineyard industry, a fourth generation of the famous winemaking family.
One of the people who led out the area out of the late 50s, 60s, and did a lot of the work then to promote the valley, and of course is running Drayton's to get the Hunter Valley on the map.
Reg left the long-standing family business 6 years ago to set up a smaller concern. Well regarded as a hard worker, he has recently suffered heart problems. The trip to Lord Howe was to be a welcome break with friends. In a sad twist, Mr. and Mrs. Drayton had planned to take the trip the week before, but Reg Drayton was too ill to travel, so they postponed their holiday for 7 days. Reg is regarded as a character in the industry. Speaking on the Today Show in 1988, he gave his cure for a hangover. The close-knit community in the Pecolbin district has been stunned by the crash.
The thoughts of the whole area is very much with them, and of course with Robin and Steve and their children and the rest of the family.
Peter Ryan, NBN News.
This was the scene that confronted showgoers on Saturday at the Lennon Brothers Circus in Newcastle. But while these protesters were peaceful, others took a more radical line, spraying slogans demanding the animals' freedom and causing hundreds of dollars damage. Now Lake Macquarie Council must decide if there'll be circuses in future in its area. Following a call for the banning of the shows earlier this year, a report has been released which council is due to discuss tomorrow night.
Obviously there's a public demand, an interest in circuses and animals in circuses. It's not an easy question, but it's one I guess we're going to have to address.
It's a heated debate, circus operators saying their animals are well kept and have been bred for generations in captivity, opponents saying the confinement and training methods are cruel.
I have a problem personally with animals, the wild animals like tigers and lions that are just in a cage and for people to look at. I really believe that people could go to a zoo to see those sort of exhibits.
Mayor John Kilpatrick says laws across the state should be uniform. The recommendation to council is for a reply to be sought from circus owners before a decision is made. Joanne Shoebridge, NBN News.
Conditions for the championship were far from perfect today, the blustery wind producing several whitecaps on the Hunter River. It failed to deter drivers, particularly Swansea's David Bowen and Quick Trip, who hit a wave travelling at just under 200 kilometres an hour and somehow regained control. Remarkably, Bowen got back into the 6-litre class race, finishing third behind Seabreeze, driven by Sydney's Henry Eitz and Newcastle's Alan Newton in Desperado. After winning Heat 1 of the feature event, former Boggabilla driver and now Tamworth-based Brian McCosker was favourite for the second heat of the Hunter Championship. The Australian Unlimited Displacement champion made a good start before being passed at the bottom marker by Barry Chesser and Fury Marine. Despite a valiant attempt by McCosker, Chesser held his lead with Seabreeze third.
One lane of the highway was blocked as rescue workers struggled to release the driver trapped by his head and shoulders in the cabin. Police say the semi-trailer had been travelling south from Coffs Harbour laden with a load of cut timber when 44-year-old Christopher Campbell lost control as he attempted to turn a sharp bend. The rig crashed into a concrete barrier, overturned and skidded 100 metres before coming to rest.
Heavy vehicle accidents are becoming a worry, and it seems to be now that speed is a factor, especially on this section of the road. We've had 3 here in the last 6 months, basically in the same position.
Paramedics worked to stabilise the driver. Nearly 2 hours later, he was released and flown by the rescue helicopter to Newcastle's John Hunter Hospital in a stable condition, suffering a broken collarbone. Police say the accident could have been far worse and claim all they can do is warn motorists to slow down.
It's a combination of speed and driver fatigue.
Melinda Smith, NBN News.
Councillors will review a report next week and make their final decision in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, look this way. Yeah, can you turn around this way, Thomas?
Might get the crowd in the background.
Come in there.
With your face so he gets a crowd behind
Yeah, hang on,
him.
just try to get this one first.
When you put your arms around me,
The Business Enterprise Centre helps about 50 different clients every month, from enterprises as simple as a delivery run to organisations needing financial advice. The centre has been a leg up for literally hundreds of businesses.
We get people asking us all sorts of questions when they're looking at starting their businesses. Simple things like how do I register a business name, right through to how do I do a marketing plan.
There are 48 similar centres in New South Wales. They emerged after a disastrous period in the 80s when hundreds of small businesses went bust because of poor information about marketing, management and financing. The service is free and relies upon government grants and sponsorship from local businesses. Today, the state government announced it will provide $86,000.
And that's approximately 50% of our budget that we work within. And that provides us with the money to see through the whole 12 months in providing our practical business assistance.
Also today, the member for Mile Lakes, John Turner, announced the government will spend $82,000 on a training program for school leavers and young unemployed in the Manning. It may sound slow, but at a top speed of 3.3 kilometres per hour, this mobile roof bolter is the Formula One racer of coal mining equipment. A delegation of 13 mining officials from China's Haoneng Coal Corporation today inspected the machine as it was put to the test, drilling a 2-metre hole into this 8-tonne concrete block in about 20 seconds.
As the continuous miner moves from heading to heading, the machine follows and keeps putting up the roof support.
The mobile roofer is the first machine able to support mine ceilings up to 5 metres high. It's a coup for the family-owned company, which employs 105 people. This rig will sell for between $500,000 and $600,000.
We've sold 4 of these machines to the Chinese. This is the third of a series that's going. There's another one in South Africa currently that we've had fitted up, and it was on display at the Electromining Show in South Africa.
Australian coal companies are also interested in the roof bolter, the only Australian machine of its kind. Joanne Shoebridge, NBN News.
I said to him, is any cow party on when you got it? And he said, oh no, it's as clean as a new cucumber. So I know that was all right. And anyhow, along come Bill with it in that evening.
The body of 66-year-old John Victor Brown was found in his home in Bay Road, the entrance, in March this year. He had received 7 stab wounds to the head and neck and multiple lacerations and fractures to the rest of his body. A post-mortem revealed the most likely cause of death was blood loss due to blows from both sharp and blunt instruments. The Crown alleged a number of household implements were used to injure Mr Brown. These included a knife, can opener, cooking pot, carpet sweeper and 2 broken bottles. Irene Margaret Starr today appeared in Newcastle Supreme Court, charged with murdering Mr Brown. Mrs Starr pleaded not guilty to murder, but guilty of manslaughter on the grounds of provocation. But that plea was not accepted. The trial is continuing on the murder charge. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
Western Suburbs halfback Tony Price made it official today, signing with Winfield Cup side the Sydney Tigers. Meeting Tigers coach Wayne Pearce at Wyong, Price committed to playing with the club for 2 years, leaving behind the job as captain-coach of West next season.
Something that I've always wanted to do, and every footballer sort of deep in their heart wants to play in the Winfield Cup to prove it to himself that they can or can't play at that level.
The 25-year-old has been with West for the last 6 years and has played 20 representative games for the city.
He's got a very good organising game, a good kicking game, and at the halfback's a key man in the side, so I intend him to play a pivotal role in the 1995 outfit.
Price, with his wife and young baby, will move to Sydney in January to begin training with the Tigers. West say there's no hard feelings about Price's departure, adding its coach-to-be leaves with the full blessings of the club. Now faced with having to find a replacement player coach, over the next few days the club's football committee will discuss several applicants, some of whom it's believed are former Winfield Cup players currently based in the country but outside of Newcastle. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.